Yo, wagwan my people, welcome back. And yes, we're back on the dark side, and I'm going to break down how I made this dark, unique trap beat. So let's get straight into it. So when I first started off this dark, unique trap beat, I started off with this arpeggiated guitar which I got from Omnisphere, and this is the one that I had chosen here, weathered strumming, and this is the pattern for it, and this is what it sounds like. And the key that I'm working in is G sharp minor, and the first effect I added was some channel EQ, and I had low cut it by 336 Hz, as you can see right here. Then I took out some of the low mids around 450 Hz, and I just took out 2.4 dBs just to clear out some of that muddiness, as you can see right here. And then I also took out some of the high mids just to tame some of that harshness around 2K, as you can see right here. After that, I put on some halftime, and my mix is at 100%, and then I added some reverb, and now this isn't much reverb, and I'm only at 24%, and my decay is only at 2 seconds. And then lastly, I added some compression. Now I added this compression just to help balance the dynamics of the guitar. Now this is what it sounds like after all the effects. Next, I added a phrase from Arcade, and this is the library I got it from, Detune Dimension, and this is what it sounds like. And I didn't add any effects to that, I just left it the way it was. Now this is what they both sound like together now. Next, I added some textured pads which I got from Omnisphere, and I went into categories and I selected textures playable, and I went to ambient, and then I ended up choosing this preset right here, Dawn over the Amazon 2, and this is what it sounds like. And the only effect that I added to that was some EQ, and I took off everything below 214 Hz, and in this area right here I took out some of that muddiness, which is around 400 and the 500 area, and then here about 1K there is a bit of harshness, so I took some of that out, and then just above 5K I took off some of those highs just to tone and shape the textured pads. Now this is what everything sounds like together now. Next, I added some more pads which I got from Omnisphere, and this is the preset I had chosen, and I got it from the pad and strings category, and this is what it sounds like. And the only effects that I added to that was some EQ, and I low cut it by 189 Hz. And lastly, I added some keys which I got from the Alchemy plugin in Logic. And then in the category section I chose keys, and then in the genre I went to ambient, and I ended up finding this preset right here called Flute Phonics, and this is what it sounds like. And the only effects I added to that was some EQ, and I just low cut it by 515 Hz, and this is what everything sounds like together now. Once I was happy with this sample, I just went and bounced it down to an audio file. And this is the audio file right here. And what I done was I reversed it and then I pitched it up 7 semitones, as you can see right here. Now this is what it sounds like. Now what I had also done with the main sample, I took off the last 4 bars. So as you can see here, this is what I done. So I just took off these last 4 bars and just duplicated the first 4 bars so that it just repeats. I added some EQ, and as you can see, I low cut it by 218 Hz just so I can make space for my kick drum and my bass. Once I was happy with that main sample, I started to build it out by adding one-shots, accents and phrases. Now the first accent that I got is from the Accent Essentials kit volume 1, and this is what it sounds like. And the first effect I added was some channel EQ, and I took off everything below 430 Hz. Next I added some direction mixer, and as you can see it's panned to the left by minus 26 degrees. Next I added another accent which is also from the same Accent Essentials kit, and this is what it sounds like. And the first effect I added to that was some EQ, and I took off everything below 352 Hz. Next I added some H delay. Now I added this H delay just to add a bit more bounce and rhythm to the accent. Next I added some direction mixer, and as you can see it's panned to the right by plus 31 degrees. Then I added one more accent which is from the Accent Essentials volume 2 kit, and this is what it sounds like. Now that's the full accent, but what I had done was I put it in reverse and just chopped it up into smaller pieces, as you can see right here. Then I added some effects, and the first effect I added was a sound shifter, and I pitched it up 3 semitones just to pull it back into key of my song. Next I added another sound shifter which is pitched up by 12 semitones. Then I added a channel EQ and I low cut it by 530 Hz. Then I added some Valhalla Uber modulation just to add some chorus and a bit of texture. And then I added some Valhalla shimmer. The reason why I added this Valhalla shimmer was just to add some ambience and atmosphere to the accent. And then lastly I added some direction mixer, and as you can see it's panned to the right by plus 30.5 degrees, and this is what everything sounds like so far. Next I added some vocals which I got from Arcade, and these are the vocals that I had chosen, Back to Childhood, and this is what the vocals sound like. And then what I ended up doing with those vocals was I bounced it down to an audio file and then just chopped it up. Now as you can see right here, this is the part of the vocal that I had chopped up and I had chosen, and then I added some effects to it, and the first effect that I added was an EQ, and I low cut it by 316 Hz, and then in the area at 380 Hz I took out some of that muddiness, and then I added another EQ. Now this is the mag EQ, and as you can see at 160 Hz I took out more of that muddiness, and then at 2.5k I boosted it just to help give it some more presence in the higher mids. Then I added some R compressor. Now the reason why I added this R compressor was just to help with the dynamics of the vocal, just to help balance it so I can get a more balanced signal. And then I added some RVox, and with this RVox it's furthermore helping to balance the dynamics of the vocal but also giving me some more volume. Next I added some Valhalla Uber. I've added this just to add a bit of texture and chorus, and as you can see my mix is at 50%. Then I added another EQ. Now as you can see with this EQ here, around the area 398 Hz I took out more of that muddiness, and this is because when I added the Valhalla Uber mod it added a bit more of that area, so I had to take it out just so I can get a more balanced tone and a more cleaner sound. And then right here, this is just a bandpass narrow. So this allows me to shape the high end and the low end both at the same time. So I've just used this just to help shape and tone the vocal some more. And then next I added some J37. Now I've added this just to give it a bit of tape saturation, and then I've also played with the wow and the flutter just to help give it that wobble and that tone to that vocal. Then I added some Valhalla shimmer. Now I added this Valhalla shimmer just to add a bit more ambience and a bit more atmosphere to the vocal. And then lastly I added some direction mixer, and as you can see I've panned it minus 31.5 degrees to the left. Then I added another vocal, and this is the name of the preset that I had chosen, and this is what it sounds like. And what I've done with that vocal is I bounced it down to an audio file, and then the first effect that I added was some EQ, and I took off quite a lot of the lows, everything below 690 Hz. Then I added some Valhalla Uber mod. Once again I'm adding some chorus and some texture to this vocal, and as you can see my mix is at 50%. Then I added some waves tune. Basically all it is just the auto tune, and I just chose the range here which is soprano, and then ended up putting it in the key of D sharp, which is the key of the song that I'm working in. And then right here, the speed, I turned it all the way up to 800, and then the note transition, I turned it all the way up to 800. And then after that, I added some J37. Once again, I'm adding this just to add a bit of tape saturation. And then next I added another EQ, and once again I'm adding the bandpass narrow just so I can just select this range between 1K and just above 5K, because I only want those frequencies. And then I added some doubler. Now this doubler is from Waves, and I've added this just to add a bit more chorus to the vocal. Next I added some H delay. Now I've added this H delay just to add a bit more bounce and a bit more vibe to the vocal. And then lastly I've added some direction mixer. Now with this direction mixer, it's panned to the right by 28.5 degrees. Now this is what everything sounds like with the vocal so far. Next I added some strings. Now I got these strings from the Contact Sound Library, and they are the Sonos Score lyrical violin phrases. And this is the sound bank that I used, and this is the phrase that I chose from this sound bank. Now with these string phrases, as you can see I've got 4 different string phrases, so I'll play through them so you can get a feel and understand what I was going for. So this is the first one. Here's the second one. Here's the third one. And then here's the fourth one. Now with each of those strings I bounced them all down to an audio file and then chopped it up and rearranged it. Now as you can see here, this is how I've rearranged it. Now with each of these 4 strings I added an EQ on each channel, and this is what each EQ looks like on each channel, and I've low cut it by 700 Hz, just taking out all of the lows. And then next what I had done was I grouped all these strings into one group channel so then I can process them all at once. And then the first plugin I added on that group channel was some Valhalla Uber mod. Now I added this Valhalla Uber mod just to add a bit of texture and a bit of chorus to the strings, and my mix is only on 25%. Next I added some Valhalla shimmer. Now I added this Valhalla shimmer just to add a bit more vibe and a bit more ambience and atmosphere to the strings, and my mix is only on 31%. Next I added another EQ. Now with this EQ I've taken off everything below 433 Hz. Next I added some compression. Now I added this compressor because I wanted to help control the dynamics of all the strings. I wanted this compressor to catch all the articulations and the different variations and expressions of the strings, just so it can help enhance it some more and just give the strings a bit more feeling. And then lastly, I added the limiter. Now I've added this limiter just so it could catch the peaks from the strings and to also give me just a bit more volume. Now this is what everything sounds like together so far. After that, I added the B section. Now in this B section, I added some pads. Now I got these pads from the Cercinus kit volume 1, and these are the pads right here, is this one. Now as you can see right here, I cut off the start of these pads, but this is what it sounds like. And then the first effects that I added to that was some Valhalla Uber mod, and my mix is at 50%. Now I'm adding this Valhalla Uber mod just to add a bit of chorus and texture to the pads. Next, I added some channel EQ, and as you can see, I've low cut it by 965 Hz just to get rid of all the lows, because I wanted more of the high end frequencies. And then lastly, I added some H delay. Now I've added this H delay just to give a bit more bounce and vibe to the pads. Now this is what the pads sound like with the main sample. After that, I went and added some basses. Now the first bass I added was an 808, and this is the name of it right here. Now I got this 808 from the ATL Culture Kit. Now all the sound kits that I'm using, the link for all of them will be in the description box below, so go and check them out. This is what the 808 sounds like. And then the first effect that I added was some FabFilter Saturn. Now the reason why I've added this FabFilter Saturn, I just wanted to add some distortion and a bit of saturation to the 808s. After that, I added some multi-band compression. Now the reason for me using this multi-band compression was because when the bass goes into some of those higher notes, the sub part of the 808 really intensifies and it's just a bit too much. So I've used this multi-band compression just to help control the sub part of the 808s. So with these notes here that are on F sharp and then it goes down to F, this is where the sub part of the 808 really intensifies. So I'm going to play it without the multi-band compression just so you can see what I mean. Now I'm going to turn the multi-band compression on, and now just watch as it hits those notes in F sharp and F, how it just controls it a bit more, and now everything's a bit more balanced. So now, as you can see, with that multi-band compression, when it gets into those higher notes, it's just a lot more smoother on the sub part of the 808. Now this is what everything sounds like together so far. Then I went and got myself a synth bass. Now this synth bass is only used for the intro. This plugin right here called Signature R&B plugin, and this is the name of the bass that I've used. You've probably seen me use this bass a few times in previous tutorials. And then the only effect that I added to that was some dimension expander, and it's this one right here. And the only reason for me adding this was just to make the synth bass just a little bit wider, and this is what it sounds like. Once I was happy with the basses, I moved on to the drums, and the first drum sound I started with was a snare. Now all my drums, they're either from the ATL Culture kit or the Analog Essentials Mini Stash kit, and some are from Splice. This is the first snare that I started with, and this is what it sounds like. Then I added another snare just to layer with the first snare, and this is the snare that I chose, and this is what it sounds like. Then I added one last snare just to add a bit more body and a bit more depth to the snares, and this is it right here, and this is what it sounds like all together now. Next I added some hi-hats, and this is the hi-hat that I chose, and this is what it sounds like. Now as you can see with this hi-hat, I've utilised the velocities just to give a unique bounce and a human feel to the hi-hats. And then next I added some open hi-hats, and this is the open hi-hat that I chose, and this is what it sounds like. And then to finish off the drums, I added a kick drum, and this is the kick drum that I chose, and this is what it sounds like. And then I added some effects to the kick drum, and the first effect that I added was some transient designer. Now I've added this transient designer just to help the kick cut through the mix some more and to give it some more punch, and I've done that by increasing the attack knob right here just under 3 dBs. Next I added some EQ. Now this is Waves Pultec EQ, and what I've done here is I've put the low frequency on 100 and I've boosted it just 1.5 dBs just to help give the kick some more punch. So as you can see, I've already gone ahead and arranged the beat. This 16 bar here is just the intro. The next 16 bars after that, right here, this is the final drop, and then after that is just a slight breakdown where I add these pads right here, which I spoke about earlier, and then this whole section here with the strings is just a different variation, and then after that I just loop everything. So this whole section, it just repeats itself from when it drops after the intro. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it so we can get a vibe and a feel of what I've created. that's the end of the tutorial, and I really enjoyed making this one, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. But more importantly, I hope that you've learned something, and if there's anything you want me to work on in the next tutorial or up and coming tutorials, just let me know in the comments below. Please like, share and subscribe. Until next time, peace out.